Once, there was a kind father who had two sons. The father loved both of his sons very much and worked hard to give them a good life. They lived together on a large farm, with plenty of everything they needed to be happy and comfortable. The older son was responsible and worked hard in the fields every day, helping his father manage their land and their animals. The younger son, however, was restless. He dreamed of a life far away from the quiet countryside, a life filled with excitement and new adventures. He watched travelers pass by their home and imagined all the wonderful things he could see and do in the big, bustling cities. One fateful day, the younger son went to his father with a bold and unusual request. He asked for his share of the family's property, the inheritance that would one day be his. He did not want to wait until his father was gone. He wanted his money right away so he could start his own life. The father was saddened by this, as it felt like his son was wishing he were already gone. He loved his son deeply and did not want to see him leave their loving home. But he also wanted his son to be happy and to find his own way in the world. So with a heavy heart, the loving father agreed to his son's wish. He divided his property and gave the younger son his portion. With a bag full of silver coins and his heart full of grand dreams, the younger son said goodbye to his family. He left his father and his older brother behind and set off for a distant country. He was thrilled to finally be free, to make his own choices and live without any rules. When he arrived in a far-off city, he was amazed by all the bright lights and endless entertainment. He quickly made many new friends who were attracted to his wealth and his willingness to spend it. They spent their days and nights having lavish parties, eating expensive food, and buying whatever their hearts desired. The son felt like he was living the most wonderful life imaginable. For a while, everything seemed perfect. The son spent his money without a single thought for tomorrow, believing his fortune would last forever. He bought fancy clothes, threw extravagant feasts, and gave generous gifts to his new companions. He never thought about his family back home or the simple, quiet life he had left behind. He was completely caught up in the whirlwind of pleasure and excitement. He was the center of attention, surrounded by people who laughed at his jokes and praised his generosity. He thought these people were his true friends, and that this exciting life of luxury was the ultimate source of happiness, a far cry from the predictable routine of working on his father's farm. The younger son's days of carefree spending could not last forever. Soon, he had spent every last coin of his inheritance. His money was completely gone, and his so-called friends disappeared just as quickly. Just as he found himself with nothing, a great famine spread across the land. Food became scarce and very expensive, and there was no work to be found. The son, who had once lived in luxury, was now desperately poor and terribly hungry. He wandered the streets alone, his fine clothes now tattered rags. The joy and excitement he had chased were replaced by a deep and gnawing emptiness. He was a stranger in a strange land, with no one to help him. In his desperation, he finally found a job working for a local farmer. His task was to feed the farmer's pigs. This was a lonely and humbling job for a young man who once saw himself as important. He was so hungry that he longed to eat the very pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. As he sat in the mud with the pigs, he started to think clearly for the first time in a long while. He remembered his father's house, where even the hired servants had more than enough food to eat. They had warm beds and were treated with kindness. Here he was, a son, starving to death while his father's workers lived in comfort. A powerful realization washed over him. He knew he had made a terrible mistake. He had disrespected his father, wasted his inheritance, and lived a foolish and selfish life. He felt a deep sense of shame and regret for everything he had done. He decided right then and there what he must do. He would get up, leave this miserable place, and begin the long journey back to his father's house. He would admit his wrongdoing and accept the consequences of his actions. He knew he was no longer worthy to be called his father's son, but he hoped, with all his heart, that his father might take him back as a hired servant. With newfound resolve, he began to rehearse the words he would say. "Father," he would confess, "I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." This humble apology was his only hope. He did not expect to be welcomed back into the family or to be treated as a son again. All he dared to wish for was a chance to work for his food and to be near the home he had so foolishly abandoned. With this small flicker of hope lighting his path, he stood up, turned his back on the pigs, and started walking the long, dusty road that led back home. The father had never stopped loving his younger son. Every single day since his son had left, the father would climb to a high place and watch the road, hoping to see a familiar figure in the distance. He missed his son terribly and prayed for his safe return. His heart ached with worry, but he never gave up hope. He longed to see his son again, not to scold him or to punish him, but simply to hold him in his arms. His love was unconditional, a steady flame that burned brightly through all the days of waiting. He scanned the horizon day after day, his eyes searching for any sign of his lost child coming home. One afternoon, while he was watching as always, he saw a figure far down the road. Even from a great distance, the father's heart knew. It was his son. He could tell by the way he walked, even though he was stooped and ragged. Overcome with emotion, the father did not wait for his son to reach the house. He was filled with incredible compassion and joy. He lifted his robes and began to run toward him, an act of great urgency and love. He ran faster than he had in years, his only thought to close the distance between himself and his long-lost child. He could not wait another moment to welcome him back. As the father reached his son, he threw his arms around him and kissed him, tears of joy streaming down his face. The son, overwhelmed by this unexpected display of affection, began his prepared speech. "Father," he said, his voice trembling with shame, "I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But before he could even finish his apology or ask to be a servant, his father stopped him. The father wasn't interested in hearing about his son's failures. He was only interested in celebrating his return. His heart was so full of love that there was no room for anger or disappointment. The father turned to his servants, who had followed him out to the road, and gave them urgent commands. "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him," he ordered. "Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Go and bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate." The servants hurried to obey, astonished but happy to see their master's joy. The father explained to them, his voice ringing with happiness. "For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." The return of his son was like a miracle, a resurrection from a long and painful absence. While the celebration was beginning, the older son was out working diligently in the fields, just as he did every day. As he walked back toward the house at the end of the day, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He was confused by the noise and called over one of the servants to ask what was happening. The servant replied with excitement, "Your brother has come home and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older son's heart did not fill with joy. Instead, a wave of anger and resentment washed over him. He felt betrayed and hurt by his father's actions. The older son was so upset that he refused to go inside and join the party. His father, noticing his absence, came out to find him and pleaded with him to come in and celebrate. But the older son was full of bitterness. He complained to his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends." He felt that his loyalty and hard work had been completely overlooked. He could not understand why his irresponsible brother was being honored with such a grand feast after wasting the family's wealth. The father listened patiently to his older son's angry words. His response was gentle and full of love, not just for the son who had returned, but also for the one who had stayed. "My son," he said softly, "you are always with me and everything I have is yours. You have always had my love and a share in all that we own." He tried to help his older son see beyond his feelings of jealousy and unfairness. He wanted him to understand the deeper meaning of this moment, to see that their family was now whole again, which was the greatest treasure of all. He reminded him that his place in the family was secure and had never been in doubt. Then the father explained the reason for the great celebration. "But we had to celebrate and be glad," he continued, "because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." This was not about rewarding bad behavior. It was about celebrating the miracle of redemption and the power of forgiveness. The father's message was a profound lesson for both his sons and for all of us. It teaches that making mistakes is part of being human, but asking for forgiveness can lead us back home. Most importantly, it shows that a family's love, like the father's love, is big enough to welcome back the lost and rejoice in their return.